You are born into a world that smells like smoke, sweat, manure, and wet straw. Congratulations. Medieval Europe. Forget castles first. Those were for maybe 1% of the 1%. You're arriving on dirt. Literally. Your mother squats in a smoky hut, and the midwife uses whatever rag she hasn't already used to wipe pig snot this morning. And the miracle of birth? It's less miracle. More survival lottery. Your odds of making it to age 5 hover around 50-50. No pressure, little one, but let's say you survive. You open your eyes to a home that is basically a box of wattle and daub. Sticks covered in mud, patched with dung. Roof thatched straw, floor packed earth, damp, crawling with lice, fleas, and occasionally chickens. Beds are communal hay piles. Privacy is a myth. Your father? He's already working the land because he owes rent, taxes, and tithes. 3 masters, none forgiving. The local lord wants his grain. The king wants his soldier. The church wants its cut. Welcome to medieval economics. You produce food, and everyone else eats it first. And the church bell, always the bell. It orders your days, your prayers, your fasts. No matter how tired you are, how blistered your hands, you're supposed to kneel and mutter in Latin you don't understand. But Latin sounds fancy, so maybe God prefers it. Childhood doesn't exist in the modern sense. By 7, you're working, feeding pigs, hauling water, gathering firewood, maybe standing guard against wolves. School, if you're very, very lucky, and your father's not broke, you learn letters from a priest. But most likely, your alphabet is sweat, mud, and aching knee. And the food, let's pause. Your diet is bread, more bread, occasionally porridge with a side of stale bread. Meat, maybe at Christmas. Cheese, if you didn't sell it. Ale, always. Even the children drink ale because water is basically a bacteria cocktail. You don't drink water unless you want to spend the night explosively purging your insides. But let's not romanticize this into some peasant chic Instagram cottagecore aesthetic. The medieval diet left you malnourished, stunted, and with teeth that look like a battlefield. No dentists, just toothaches, until eventually the tooth falls out or you die of infection. Let's zoom out. You think of knights in shining armor? Reality check. Knights did exist, but they were rich bullies on horses. Armor was so expensive it could bankrupt a small village. And chivalry? That's just propaganda written by court poets to make the slaughter look noble. What about hygiene? People did bathe, just not often. Soap existed, but it was harsh and expensive. Lice combs were common. You scratched, picked, and got used to the crawling sensation. Showers? Forget it. Smelling like sweat and livestock wasn't shameful. It was the human baseline. Medicine? Oh, you're going to love this. Your body is controlled by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Too much of one? The doctor bleeds you with a rusty knife. Got a fever? Must be demon. Cure? Prayers and maybe leeches. Surgery? With no anesthesia? Pray hard. Let's not forget the fun parts. The plague hasn't even shown up yet in this story. That's the 1300s. But tuberculosis, dysentery, smallpox, and random infected cuts are all ready to end you early. You wouldn't last a day, but somehow you adapt. You get used to hunger, cold, backbreaking work. You even laugh, sing, play dice in taverns when you can, because human beings are stubborn. We can normalize misery like it's a second skin. Still, living in the medieval world is like constantly balancing on a knife's edge, between hunger and survival, between faith and fear, between a life that feels too short and a death that's always waiting in the wing. Cue the bell again. Time for prayer. Markets bustle. Merchants shout. Pickpockets thrive. Minstrels play questionable songs. People gossip, bargain, and occasionally brawl. Entertainment, bear baiting, cockfights, mystery plays, public executions. Yes, executions were family outings. Bring the kids. And war. Always war. Some noble argues with another noble about who owns which muddy patch of land. And suddenly, every peasant son is drafted. You're handed a spear, no training, and told to fight. Armor? Too expensive. You wear whatever rags you own and hope not to die in the first charge. Spoiler, you probably die. But let's be fair, life wasn't non-stop misery. There were festivals. Religious feasts broke the monotony. May Day dancing, harvest fairs, ale flowed, music played. People flirted under torchlight. These moments were brief sparks, but enough to remind you that joy wasn't extinct. Marriage? You don't marry for love. You marry for land. livestock, or alliances. Girls marry by 14, sometimes younger. Boys, not much later. Life expectancy forces urgency. Children come quickly, and often leave just as quickly. But when one survives, you feel a rare kind of pride. The church continues its iron grip. Every fear, every hope, every event funnels through God's will. Lightning hits your barn, punishment, good harvest, blessing. Baby dies, mystery of faith. People don't question much, not because they're stupid, but because questioning gets you burned, literally. Heresy isn't an intellectual hobby, it's a death sentence. Meanwhile, the upper-class parties. The nobility feasts on roasted boar, venison, imported wine. They wear colors peasants could never afford. Crimson, gold, deep blue. And you look at them, chewing fat on silver plates, while you gnaw crusts, and you wonder, are they even the same species? Spoiler, they are. They just have money. Money buys clean clothes, better food, better homes, and the luxury of not dying by 30. But even lords aren't immune. Plague, childbirth, war, all cut across class. Death was the great equalizer. Still, as a peasant, your ceiling is low, unless you join the church, become a monk, nun, or priest, and you might trade mud for stone walls and manuscripts. Of course, celibacy is required, along with a life of chanting and copying texts until your eyes bleed. But hey, it beats plowing. So you grind, day after day, year after year. Work, pray, sleep, repeat. Life is hard, brutal, brief, but somehow, in the cracks of that struggle, music plays. Someone sings. Someone jokes about the Lord's big nose. Someone carves a little bird out of wood. Small rebellions against the endless grind. So here you are. You've trudged through childhood mud, survived the hungry winters, endured the endless grind of harvests and taxes. You've watched siblings vanish into graves before they even learned their prayers. You've grown old by 30, and just when you think you've seen every possible flavor of misery, the century serves up its main course, plague. It begins with rumors, a sickness far away, ships bringing bad air, foreigners whispering of boils like plums. You shrug it off. People are always sick. Life is basically one long flu season. Then, one morning, you hear it. A cart rumbling down the street, wheels squeaking, driver shouting, "Bring out your dead." You peek out your hut. 2 bodies tumble onto the pile, wrapped in blankets. Neighbors you saw laughing last week at the tavern, now gray, stiff, and silent. By evening, another cart comes, this one too full to hold more. The Black Death has arrived. It starts close. Your cousin. He wakes up with a fever, sweating through his linen shirt. By midday, swellings bloom under his armpits, his groin, his neck, black, swollen lumps the size of egg. He moans, begs for water, vomits blood. The priest refuses to enter the house. He stands at the door, mumbling prayers quickly, looking away like he doesn't want to breathe the same air. Within 3 days, your cousin is dead. His skin spotted black, his body stinking like rot before it even cools. The burial? A mass grave. No time for proper rites, just a trench, a pile, a hurried cross sign. You stand there, numb, watching, knowing it's only the beginning. Society unravels. Markets close. Churches lock their doors. Bells stop ringing because even bell ringers are dead. Fields go unplowed. Livestock wander unattended. Whole villages are abandoned overnight, doors hanging open, pots still on the hearth. Doctors, useless. They parade in bird-like plague masks stuffed with herbs, waving sticks at the air. They mutter about bad vapors and corrupted air. Their cures, burning incense, drinking vinegar, bleeding patients already half dead, and priests. Some cling tighter than ever to rituals, flagellating themselves in public parades, whipping their backs bloody to atone for humanity's sin. Others desert entirely, disappearing into the countryside. Neighbors turn against neighbors. Jews are blamed, foreigners blamed, witches blamed. Pogroms erupt. It's always easier to burn someone else than admit that death doesn't discriminate. Don't go near them, your mother hisses, yanking you back from the lane. They say the sickness leaps. It's God's punishment. Your uncle mutters, eyes wild, "We must pray harder." Pray? Your father snaps, "God's already deaf. We need food. We need—" He stops. He doesn't finish, because he knows the truth. Nothing helps. Flip of the coin. Statistically, half the population will die. Half, think about that. Every other face you know will vanish. Friends, family, strangers, gone. It's like the world keeps flipping a coin over every head. Heads, you live. Tails, the pit. And survival doesn't mean safety. Survivors inherit silence, streets with no laughter, empty homes with cobwebs still on the dishes. You wander through one such place. The silence is thick. Doors stand ajar. Chickens peck at scraps on the ground. A child's toy doll lies in the dirt. You call out once, twice, no answer. The wind carries only the creak of shutters. Everyone here is gone. You back away, clutching your own chest as if you can hold your breath against the void. But let's say, miracle, you dodge the Black Death. Guess what? The era still has other gifts waiting. Famine strikes whenever harvests fail. Grain rots, fields flood, summers scorch. Without refrigeration, food spoil. Without imports, there's no backup. Winter arrives like a wolf at the door, and you ration crusts so thin they could almost be paper. Hunger gnaws differently than plague, slower, more patient. Children cry themselves quiet after weeks of emptiness. Adults chew bark, grass, whatever fills the stomach. Some steal, some starve, some quietly disappear into the forest, not returning. Then there are wars. Kings still fight, because kings never stop fighting. Armies tramp across the land, taking what little food is left, leaving villages burned, women violated, men conscripted. It's not just disease that wants you dead, it's everything. Suppose, somehow, you live into your 40s. Congratulations, you're a walking miracle. But old age in the medieval world doesn't mean gentle rocking chairs and grandchildren bringing you tea. It means teeth gone. You're chewing with gums or pounding food to mush. Eyes failing. Candlelight doesn't help. You squint at every shadow. Joints inflamed, bent, swollen. Knees ache so much you groan just standing. Back permanently hunched from decades of hauling wood, plowing, carrying loads. The younger villagers call you ancient, though you're barely 50. They respect you, sort of. Mostly, they pity, because everyone knows your candle is guttering. And when sickness finally comes, because it always does, you don't resist. You lie on the straw mat, listening to your own labored breath. You can hear your children whispering in the corner, already discussing who will inherit the pig. You close your eyes. Darkness. Here's the cruelest part. Within a year of your burial, your name starts fading. Your children remember, sure, but neighbors don't. Within a generation, even your descendants just know. We had a grandfather once. He worked the fields. He died. Your life collapses into anonymity. The church keeps records, but who reads them? Your struggles, your laughter, your pain, gone. That's medieval immortality. Obscurity. Unless you're a king, a bishop, or someone who kills enough people to be remembered in chronicles, history doesn't care. Humor in the gutter. And yet, here's the paradox. Even in this grinding misery, people still laugh. They tell jokes at wakes. They make fun of the priest's bald spot. They drink ale and sing bawdy songs about miller's daughters. Humor is survival. Picture this, a plague pit being filled. One gravedigger turns to another, muttering, "At least they won't need dinner tonight." The other smirks. Gallows humor. Because when death is everywhere, you either laugh or you break. The medieval world itself, by the late 14th and 15th centuries, feels like it's limping. Old feudal structures strain. Labor shortages after the plague let peasants demand higher wages, shocking the lords. Revolts erupt. Serfdom weakens. It's not progress in the modern sense, more like slow cracking of a rotten beam. But still, it hints at something beyond the mud. Renaissance will come. Printing will come. Science will eventually crawl out of the shadows. But you won't see that. Not you. The medieval everyman. You'll die before then, body sinking into earth, soul whispered into church prayers. Your death isn't grand. No one writes a ballad about you. You simply fade. The priest reads a formulaic prayer. The dirt covers you. Life carries on. But here's the secret. Survival wasn't pointless. The generations that built cathedrals, plowed fields, endured hunger and plague. They laid the crooked, muddy road that eventually led to modern life. Without their anonymous endurance, you wouldn't be here, in your soft bed, listening to this. So why did it suck to live in the medieval era? Because life was a constant duel with hunger, disease, war, and cold. And death usually won, because myths of knights and castles hide the truth of endless mud, but also because human beings were cursed with hope. Even when they knew the odds, they kept sewing, singing, praying. They kept dragging themselves out of bed each morning, because maybe this year would be better, and sometimes, rarely, it was. So lie back now. Be glad you don't live in that world. Be glad you can drink water without dying, that you can shower, that you don't owe a third of your grain to some smug baron in a drafty castle. Be glad you don't wake to the sound of plague carts. Good night, medieval you. You endured long enough. Now you can finally rest.